Order, order.
Draft Trade Union and Labour Relations Consolidation Act 1992, Amendment of Schedule A2, Order 2024.
I call the Minister to move the motion.
I beg to move that the Trade Union and Labour Relations Consolidation Act 1992, Amendment of Schedule A2 Order, which was laid in draft before this House on the 17th of October 2024, be approved. Thank you, Mr Mundell. It's a pleasure to see you in the chair this afternoon, and I'll start by referring to my register of interests. This is a straightforward instrument. I'll just start by talking a little bit about what a protective award is, which is what this relates to. It's an award that can be made by an employment tribunal when an employer does not meet their collective consultation obligations. These obligations currently apply where an employer is proposing to dismiss 20 or more employees within any 90-day period at a single establishment. Schedule A2 to the Trade Union and Labour Relations Consolidation Act 1992 sets out the list of claims for which an employment tribunal can make a 25% adjustment to compensation if one of the parties has unreasonably failed to comply with the relevant code of practice. Collective consultation requirements apply, amongst other things, to dismissal and re-engagement scenarios involving 20 or more employees. The code of practice on dismissal and re-engagement will be a relevant code of practice in such cases. The change will mean that where an employment tribunal is making a protective award in a case where the code applies and it appears to the tribunal that the employer has unreasonably failed to comply with the code, the tribunal may increase the award by up to 25%, increasing the deterrent effect. In other words, if the employer dismisses and re-engages employees but does not meet its collective consultation obligations and unreasonably fails to comply with the code, it will be liable to a greater payout. This measure will therefore give the tribunal greater discretion to take individual behaviours into account when making an award. It will add a key potential claim in dismissal and re-engagement scenarios to the list of awards that can attract a 25% adjustment for non-compliance with the code. As members may be aware, a version of this order was debated and approved in this House earlier this year. However, it was not debated in the other place because the election was called and Parliament was dissolved. That is why we are here today debating this again. If it's approved by both houses, then it will come into force in January 2025. And as members will know, the government is committed to going much further than is set out in this code. We've brought forward our Employment Rights Bill within the first 100 days of government, as we promised to do, and that will end the unscrupulous fire and rehire practices that we believe have no place in the modern employment market. In the meantime, before the bill completes its passage and comes into force, we have decided to continue with this code of practice, which came into force earlier in the summer. And whilst we recognise it is inadequate on its own, it does offer some additional protections to working people. The code sets out employers' responsibilities when seeking to change contractual terms and conditions of employment, and the order will mean, as I say, there will be a 25% uplift if an employer has unreasonably failed to comply with the code. But we will go further by ending the unscrupulous use of fire and rehire. We're consulting on reforming the law to provide effective remedies against abuse and replace the statutory code with a strengthened code of practice. So we have launched a consultation to gain views on increasing the cap to the protective award for scenarios where employers haven't complied with collective redundancy rules, and on adding interim relief to collective redundancy and fire and rehire scenarios. Increasing the protective award would mean that the small proportion of companies who currently flout existing rules could end up paying significantly more per employee. The consultation also seeks views on whether interim relief should be available to employees who bring claims for unfair dismissal in a fire and rehire scenario and for breaching collective consultation requirements. So I won't say any more, Mr Mundell, because it is a very straightforward regulation. But I would like to conclude by highlighting the government's ambitions on Make Work Pay. It is an ambitious agenda. It will strengthen the rights of workers, it will address the fragmented labour market, and it will support workers in balancing their responsibilities outside work. The plan to Make Work Pay will help people to stay in work, make work more secure and family friendly, will improve living standards, and it will put more money in working people's pockets. I therefore beg to move this regulation.
The question is that the committee has considered Draft Trade Union and Labour Relations Consolidation Act 1992, Amendment to Schedule A2, Order 2024. I call Shadow Greg Smith.
Thank you, Mr Mundell. It's a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, and as the Minister said in his opening remarks, this is largely a statutory instrument that had been consulted on and prepared by the previous Conservative government, so clearly the opposition are not going to be dividing the committee this afternoon. I do congratulate the Department for Business and Trade, however, on managing to update the explanatory memorandum, unlike a statutory instrument I responded to for the Department of Transport the other week, which still listed Guy Opperman, a minister in the previous government, as having signed off the declaration. So the measures in the Trade Union and Labour Relations Consolidation Act 1992, Amendment of Schedule A2, Order 2024, build on legislation passed under the previous government. Talking of the memorandum that accompanies this statutory instrument, Mr Mundell, it directly references historical concerns surrounding fire and rehire tactics that I put it to the committee the last Conservative government addressed through the establishment of a statutory code of practice, which I would gently suggest to the Minister should be reflected in the legislation he seeks to bring forward that we go to Bill Committee on next week. We were very clear in government with employers that they must not use the threats of dismissal to pressurise employees into accepting new terms, and that they should have honest and open-minded discussions with their employees and representatives. In accordance with the Code of Practice, businesses must consult with employees in a fair and transparent way when proposing changes to their employment terms. It is we on this side who took the initiative to uphold and secure employment rights. Meanwhile, the government, where some contention sneaks in, the government seem content with their disastrous national insurance jobs tax on employers and employees, the latter shouldering 76% of the cost, according to the Office of Budget Responsibility, to see businesses struggle and in many cases risk failure altogether. There cannot be employee protections without employees in the first place.
Very good. Andy McDonald.
Thank you, Mr Mundell. It's a delight to see you in the chair. I had thought whether it was necessary to respond, but given some of the comments I've just heard, I feel compelled to do so. It's really going to be, I can tell you. I do want to congratulate my honourable friend, the front bench, for bringing forward the Employment Rights Bill on the back of the New Deal for Working People. It will be the single and foremost change to working people's terms and conditions in this country for over a generation. It's much overdue. But when Mr Mundell, when I first saw this piece of legislation, I really got quite a shock, and I thought, is this it? I thought, well, I suppose it's better than nought, a 25% uplift. But of course, it isn't from our front bench, thank goodness. It's something we've inherited. Well, I just want to just look at this measure through the prism of the very issue of fire and rehire. Not fire and rehire, but fire and replace, as we came up against with P&O Ferries and Peter Happlethwaite. I was a member of the Business and Trade Select Committee that heard evidence from that chief executive. And he made it abundantly clear that he was quite prepared to break the law of the land on consultation periods and price it in to the compensation, the payoff of his workforce. And we got from the then government a wringing of hands and a condemnation and very little else. And it seems that this is the sum total of their response to that travesty. And I've got to tell the committee that a 25% uplift in the compensation due to the likes of P&O would be a doddle. They would not be impacted by this one jot. And I'm delighted that my honourable friend mentioned the issue of interim relief, because as I say, when we go forward with our excellent Employment Rights Bill, I'm sure we're going to have some discussion about what that interim relief will look like. And I'll just gently say that if we're going to stop another P&O, we would need injunctive relief because to try to bring out some interim relief after the horse has bolted will be no good whatsoever. I'd also gently suggest that the sorts of financial penalties that you need to impose on the egregious behaviours of people like P&O would have to be significantly higher than this. And there was talk and discussion about unlimited fines being visited on people who were quite deliberately prepared to break the law for their own ends. We've got to look at those issues very, very carefully. And in addition, when it comes to the issue of enforcement, we've got to, now we have this opportunity, we've got to reflect upon the appalling record of enforcement over the piece. The number of tribunal awards that are not paid out by employers is legion, and the ability of people to then pursue the enforcement of them is sadly lacking. So it's critically important that we have rights and protections for our workforce. It's also critically important that we have the powers to have them enforced. So, Mr Mundell, I'll close with that. I just express my relief that we didn't bring this forward. I think my honourable friend on the originally, yeah, I've got the point, but it didn't originate from this side. But we're taking it as a first step, and I just put the party opposite on notice that it is simply a first step.
I call the Minister to respond to the debate.
Thank you, Mr Mundell. Can I just start first of all by welcoming the opposition spokesperson to his place, and I feel we'll be seeing a lot more of each other, and no doubt some of the wider points he has made we can pick up in the Employment Rights Bill, which we will be debating over a number of weeks. I would just gently point out to him, though, that in terms of the critique that this is a significant step forward, and indeed addressing the points that my friend raised, that even ACAS at the time when they were asked to respond on this measure said it may not always present a significant deterrent when calculated against the financial costs and risks of an alternative approach. So even ACAS, whose job it is to reduce employment disputes, do not believe that this goes far enough. And we're very clear on this side that we do not believe that this goes far enough. That is why we are consulting on measures such as removing the cap or doubling the cap for protective awards, and possibly introducing interim relief as a measure, which of course all members are invited to respond to the ongoing and open consultation at the moment. But I'm pleased that we have agreement across the board on this. It is a small step forward, but it is an interim step. It is not the final destination, because we're very clear on this side that we want to make sure that the likes of P&O never happen again. And on that point, Mr Mundell, I commend this order to the House.
Thank you. The question is that the committee has considered draft Trade Union and Labour Relations Consolidation Act 1992, amendment to Schedule A2, Order 2024. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Order, order.
Committee Room 12, sound. Committee Room 12.